Let's take a look at what happened over this weekend when MAGA Republicans made utter fools of themselves in various TV appearances and also on the floor of the Senate with respect to Lindsey Graham, who said the reason that he's not supporting Ukraine is because we need to secure the border first, when Lindsey Graham and all the other Republicans killed a bipartisan border deal because Donald Trump said, kill the border deal because I want to complain and whine about it. Let's go through what's going down. Here is MAGA Republican Senator Marco Rubio justifying Donald Trump's remarks from this weekend in South Carolina, where Trump talked about encouraging Russia to attack our allies in NATO. And Marco Rubio goes, yeah, that's just Trump being Trump. I see nothing wrong about that. Really, Rubio? Play the clip.
You just pushed and got legislation to require the advice and consent of the Senate or an act of Congress before any president could suspend, terminate, or withdraw U.S. membership from NATO. So I want you to take a listen to something Donald Trump said yesterday on the campaign trail.
The presidents of a big country stood up and said, well, sir, if we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us? I said, you didn't pay? You're delinquent? He said, yes, let's say that happened. No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You got to pay.
You've endorsed Donald Trump. Are you comfortable with him suggesting that he wouldn't defend NATO countries and actually he would invite Putin and Russia to invade them?
Well, that's not what happened, and that's not how I view that statement. I mean, he was talking about a story that he talked about happened in the past. By the way, Donald Trump was president, and he didn't pull us out of NATO. You know, in fact, American troops were stationed throughout Europe, as they are today. They were then as well. But he's telling a story, and frankly, look, Donald Trump is not a member of the Council of Foreign Relations. He doesn't talk like a traditional politician. And we've already been through this now. You'd think people had figured it out by now. What he's basically saying is, if you see the comments, he said NATO was broke or busted until he took over because people weren't paying their dues. And then he told the story about how he used leverage to get people to step up to the plate and become more active in NATO. He's not the first American president. In fact, virtually every American president at some point in some way has complained about other countries in NATO not doing enough. You know, Trump's just the first one to express it in these terms, but I have zero concern because he's been president before. I know exactly what he has done and will do with the NATO alliance, but there has to be an alliance. It's not America's defense with a bunch of small junior partners. Some of these are big countries with big economies. Many of them are doing more. The Germans are doing a lot right now.
So here is MAGA Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, as I mentioned at the outset of the video, saying that the reason he's not supporting funding of Ukraine is because we got to secure the border first. Sort of a circular, and not sort of, is a circular, disingenuous argument, given that you killed the bipartisan border deal and said that you had to have a bipartisan border deal before supporting Ukraine, then you killed the deal, and now you say you're not supporting Ukraine. So it kind of seems like it relates to that first clip that I showed where Donald Trump talks about encouraging Russia to attack our allies. Seems that that's kind of what the Republican Party has in mind right here. And Lindsey Graham is referring to a statement made by the Prime Minister of Poland, who said, "Dear Republican senators of America, Ronald Reagan, who helped millions of us to win back our freedom and independence, must be turning in his grave today. Shame on you." And as Dylan Williams said, the states that have the most Polish Americans, as MAGA Republicans want to attack Poland, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Here, play the clip.
This is the Polish Prime Minister. Like Poland, been a great ally, good NATO ally. Dear Republican senators of America, Ronald Reagan, who helped millions of us to win back our freedom and independence, must be turning in his grave today. Shame on you. To the Prime Minister of Poland, I could care less what you think. To the Prime Minister of Poland, if Ronald Reagan were alive today, we wouldn't have this broken border. To the Prime Minister of Poland, I want to help Ukraine. I want to help make a stronger NATO. But my country is on fire. We've had 7 million people come across a broken border. How would you feel if 7 million people came in illegally into Poland? Would you have this attitude? We got to put Ukraine ahead of Poland? I am not going to put Ukraine, Israel, or anybody else ahead of America. I am going to try to create a outcome where the bill gets through the House. It's got to get through the House. And to our House colleagues, we have not done everything we could. We have let you down. Now I yield.
And by the way, just to remind you, as Lindsey Graham says that the reason that he's not supporting funding Ukraine is because there isn't a border deal. Here was Donald Trump before the weekend in Pennsylvania, bragging that he killed the border deal. Play the clip.
But you give illegal taxpayer-funded lawyers, so they have millions of dollars in this agreement, in this deal, which we, by the way, killed. I think we killed it. I think it's dead. But you can never say it because bad bills always come back to life because these guys make a lot of money with bad bills. But they give millions, tens of millions of dollars, it's down there, to lawyers to represent the illegal immigrants that come into our country. It's not even believable.
Here's Donald Trump from this weekend in South Carolina bragging about killing a bipartisan border deal whose lead negotiator was the Oklahoma Republican Senator James Langford. Play the clip.
So on Monday, go vote. Early voting, go vote. Let's not forget that this week we also had another massive victory that every conservative should celebrate. We crushed crooked Joe Biden's disastrous open borders bill. Crushed it. Mike Johnson did a very good job, and the whole group did a great job in Congress. We crushed.
By the way, just want to show you this clip. This is Republican Senator Mitt Romney saying that he thinks that it is reprehensible and appalling for this to become a campaign issue for Trump to try to harm the border so he could whine about it. Play the clip.
Oh, I think the border is a very important issue for Donald Trump, and the fact that he would communicate to Republican senators and congresspeople that he doesn't want us to solve the border problem because he wants to blame Biden for it is really appalling. But the reality is that we have a crisis at the border. The American people are suffering as a result of what's happening at the border, and someone running for president ought to try and get the problem solved, as opposed to saying, "Hey, save that problem. Don't solve it. Let me take credit for solving it later."
Ever tried to break a bad habit and felt like you're climbing Everest in flip-flops? Yeah, we've been there too, but here's a breath of fresh air. Fume. It's not about giving up, it's about switching up. Fume takes your habit and simply makes it better, healthier, and a whole lot more enjoyable. Fume is an innovative, award-winning flavored air device that does just that. Instead of vapor, Fume uses flavored air. Instead of electronics, Fume is completely natural, and instead of harmful chemicals, Fume uses delicious flavors. You get it. Instead of bad, Fume is good. It's a habit you're free to enjoy and makes replacing your bad habit easy. Your Fume comes with an adjustable airflow dial and is designed with movable parts and magnets for fidgeting, giving your fingers a lot to do, which is helpful for de-stressing and anxiety while breaking your habit. The first time I tried Fume, it was way more flavorful than I thought, and it feels very fresh. The look and feel of Fume is very sleek, it's well weighted, perfectly balanced, and extremely fun to fidget with. Plus, Fume's just released a magnetic stand for your Fume, so there's no more losing it around the house. It's built with fidgeting in mind. You can spin your Fume around and around and around it. Start the year off right with the good habit by going to tryfume.com/Meidas, tryfum.com/Meidas, and getting the Journey Pack today. Fume is giving listeners of the show 10% off when you use our code Meidas to help make starting the good habit that much easier. Go to tryfume.com/Meidas and use our code Meidas. Despite the fact that many MAGA Republican senators tried to kill Ukraine funding, the good news is 64-19 was the vote on Super Bowl Sunday. The Senate approved the motion to proceed with a foreign aid package to Ukraine, and many of the opponents did not even stay in town. But you saw Lindsey Graham right there showing you some other MAGA Republican dysfunction and I think traitorous and just bizarre and deranged behavior. Here's MAGA Republican Senator Mike Lee attacking their minority leader in the Senate, Mitch McConnell. Play the clip.
Why do you want Mitch McConnell to step down?
Look, Republican senators are not part of some feudal system. we each are represented we're each representing our own states. And in occasion after occasion, bill after bill, we've seen Senate Republican leadership joining ranks with all or most Democrats, sharply dividing Republicans, actively alienating most Republican voters, and taking a different position than most Republican senators in order to enact Democratic priorities and things that unite the Senate Democratic Conference. No, this is nothing personal against any individual in leadership. And yet, we do have to deal with this issue because this is how we alienate our voters. This is how we lose elections that should be won. We've got a real opportunity, Maria, for Republicans to take the majority this November. But if we keep doing things through our leadership that end up enacting priorities for the Democrats, we're going to have brand confusion. And the voters who we need to show up to vote for Republican candidates in Senate races all over the country are going to be less likely to do that if they can't tell which team is responsible for what policy.
You know,
Here is MAGA Republican James Comer, who chairs the House Oversight Committee, coming up with another defamatory and unhinged conspiracy theory about President Biden, that Fox, which is just a total propaganda network, not a serious news network at all, platforms this filth, this defamation, this propaganda. Play the clip.
we know there was a major cover-up of COVID, and we know that they've been stealing intellectual property for decades. Are any of these things reasons that Joe Biden allowed and he got paid for them?
It certainly looks that it could be that way, Maria. Look, you throw in him canceling the China initiative, which you and I have talked about on your show before, and what we see is a president that has a China first, America last policy, and that doesn't make any sense. So we want to know, is the president compromised?
Here is MAGA Republican Congress member Byron Donalds parroting Donald Trump's directive to whine about the border and say that the government needs to shut down. Let's torch the economy if we don't secure the border, despite the fact that Byron Donalds, MAGA Republicans, MAGA Mike Johnson, Donald Trump, the cause of why there's not a bipartisan border deal right now. Play the clip.
But I would tell the speaker that he's got to make sure that, you know, him and his team, they lock in on some of these votes because we don't have a lot of time left. The next major hurdle in front of us is going to be government funding. What are we going to do around that? And are we going to allow this government to be funded if the border remains unsecured? Because the primary job of the United States government is to secure this nation. And if it is failing at that, the way Joe Biden is failing at that, does it deserve to get funding across the board? Many members of Congress don't agree. I don't agree with that. If Joe Biden wants to fund the government, simply secure the border and we could be done.
And just so we could have a feed refresher right here, let me show you this clip of Democratic Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. Play the clip.
And look, while some of the GOP are battling to fund Ukraine and its fight against Russia, Donald Trump is saying he would encourage Russia to attack a NATO country if it is behind on payments to the alliance. The White House has called those comments appalling and unhinged. How do you interpret that?
Paging E. Jean Carroll. I need her to have the same energy about her $83.3 million that he owes. Yes, absolutely. We don't stop. We just keep going and we go and get our money. Listen, this is absolutely ridiculous that we're even talking about the candidacy of a Donald Trump, someone who we know was always palling around with Russia, someone who encouraged the interference with our domestic elections in the first place. And the fact that he has not learned his lesson from losing his election, from his very ridiculous and dangerous rhetoric, tells us everything that we need to know. I truly don't understand how and why anyone can see that this guy is a viable candidate. We are talking about someone that literally may start World War III. It is just that deep. So for everyone that thinks that they are now an expert in foreign policy, I need you to look up what happens when we don't do what we're supposed to do for our NATO countries. If you're going to be a foreign policy expert, don't just be an expert in the Middle East. Become an expert in all of foreign policy and understand how dangerous this guy is.
Yeah, and listen.
Here's another clip of Democratic Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, just so we can have a feed refresher. Play the clip.
Marks, listen, the president is fine. This game that we're playing is absolutely ridiculous. And as someone who has practiced criminal defense work before, I have never had the defense of he was just old and forgetful. Like, that is not a defense. So the fact that this report spent a lot more time talking about the subjective impressions that this special prosecutor was left with, these subjective perceptions that have no basis in law whatsoever, tells you everything that we need to know. We know, in my opinion, that there were a couple of reasons that contributed to a Trump presidency in the first place. One was the Comey report that ultimately, obviously, exonerated and cleared Hillary Clinton, but the timing of it, luckily, this came out a little bit earlier, but this is to steer away from the fact that we're talking about a guy that not only has 91 counts of indictments that are pending against him in multiple jurisdictions, has not only been found liable of sexual abuse of a woman, has not only been found liable as it relates to defamation, as well as being a fraudster when it comes to his business. But we're going to sit here and play games and act like the president's memory is the big issue. This is a guy who could not recognize his own ex-wife because he thought that his victim was his ex-wife. So if we're going to compare, then let's go ahead and compare and bring it out. But let me tell you the big comparison that matters to most American people. One guy is facing felonies for how he handled documents. Another guy is not. And that's all that matters. Point blank, full stop.
It's refreshing to have good messengers in the Democratic Party or just in the pro-democracy movements, how I see things. Here at the MeidasTouch Network, as I say, this pro-democracy community should welcome progressives, liberals, independents, people unaffiliated with political parties, conservatives, real conservatives, mainstream Republicans. Let's join together if we recognize that MAGA poses an existential threat to our democracy. If you're pro-democracy, you're pro-normalcy, you're pro-compassion and empathy, this is the community for you. Let's keep on growing it. Share this video, let people know what's up, hit subscribe. Let's get to 3 million subscribers together. Appreciate you so much, and let's have a great day.
Hey, Meidas Mighty. Love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.